Professor Jack Trammell from Randolph-Macon College. Great to have you with
John.
us, Jack.
Good morning.
Hey, I just want to tell my audience that you're probably saying, where's Dave Bratt? Now, we have invited Dave on our show numerous times. Brian Gottstein, his communication director, has refused our invitations for Professor Bratt to come on the show. He's been on several times. All we can do is ask. On the other hand, we asked the Trammell campaign, and they obliged and come on immediately. So, Jack, we want to thank you right off the bat for your accessibility. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Well, I also want to tell my audience the other person that will not come on our show is Ed Gillespie. So, I don't know, all of a sudden, Republicans don't want to come on. Go figure, right? Am I a bad guy? What do I say? I guess they want to come on and say, would you like a cold soft drink or a hot cup of coffee? Are you comfortable? God forbid we should ask either of these guys a legitimate question. Jack, tonight's debate, this is your final one, at Randolph-Macon College. It'll be streamed, by the way, over the Internet. I'm going to give that out in a minute. What are your objectives tonight in your debate with Dave Bratt?
Well, I think my objectives are to make sure that people know some of the differences between the two of us, because in some ways, over the course of a 4-month campaign, there are some issues where we look like we're somewhat in agreement about some things, and I am generally a person who has talked about reducing the size of the federal government at the same time that I want to improve and maintain some of the services that I believe are critical to our seniors, for example, and our vets. But I think tonight it'll be about differences, and I think those differences will come into contrast over the Affordable Care Act, for example. I think some of those contrasts will come into clearer focus in terms of market forces and the way I view the so-called free market.
So define what the difference is, and let's start with how you would define the free market different from Dave's.
Well, for me, the free market is not the no-rules market. And I use an analogy. Dave and I have played basketball before, and when you're just playing a pickup game, guys can call their own fouls. You know, it's call your own, gentlemen's rules. But when you get up to the NCAA Final Four, you have to have referees. And so for me, the free market is, the market itself is neither good nor bad, but people sometimes behave responsibly and sometimes people don't behave responsibly. And so we can't blame the market for that. It's always people that are involved in the market, and sometimes people behave badly. And so my thing about the free market is that we should have guardrails in place. We shouldn't restrict it in ways that hurt people economically, but we should just have common sense guardrails in place.
All right, so when you look at what went during the financial meltdown, and a lot of bankers and big Wall Street financiers, they were selling these worthless mortgages. They knew they weren't worth anything. They sold them anyway. They made millions and millions of dollars, pocketed the money. Then the economy went down. We almost went into a depression. Nothing ever happened to these guys or gals. Those that retired or were forced out, Jack, they got golden parachutes, millions of dollars. The majority of them are still there, making more money than ever. Meantime, the taxpayer got fleeced. What's up with that?
Well, see, that's where I would argue that we need guardrails, and that's where when I encounter people who want to privatize Social Security, for example, I get really nervous about the implications there, because if the rules only favor those who are in high places, then really it's not a free market at all. And again, I struggle with understanding exactly what a free market is. I understand it in the abstract perfectly fine, but in real life, people sometimes behave responsibly and sometimes they don't. And if we had, many people did have their retirements privatized and things that they lost a tremendous amount of their retirement from. And so to see people on the other side of that go scot-free is very upsetting.
Common Sense News Time, 8:46. We're with Democratic candidate for Congress in the 7th District, Professor Jack Trammell from Randolph-Macon College. He's running against Dave Bratt, and the Libertarian candidate, by the way, who will be on Wednesday. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. 8:47. Jack, let's get back to kind of this free market situation. The other day, Hillary Clinton, I guess some people would say most likely to be the Democratic candidate for president in 2016, said the other day that corporations and businesses don't create jobs. Well, let me ask you, Jack, who does?
Again, people create jobs, and to the extent that corporations are people and that businesses are people, they do create jobs. And I think she's backing away from that statement, but I certainly would say that people do create jobs. Businesses, corporations do create jobs. That is the lifeblood of a free, democratic, capitalist society, but one that I think has to have guardrails.
So what do you think the government's role is in job creation? We all talk about jobs. We want extra jobs. What's the government's role? According to some liberals, I'm just going to be candid, there's a lot of liberals out there that think, well, the government creates jobs by increased stimulus spending and things like that. In your world, if you were elected to Congress, what would be your position? What is the government's role in job creation, Jack?
Well, I'm a throwback in some ways, and I'm not a standard Democrat, but I almost envision a 21st century version of Henry Clay's American system, where we emphasize infrastructure. Back then it was canals and roads, but today it's broadband and a unity in transportation thinking, and protecting certain organic industries like agribusiness, for example, is the biggest industry in this district, and we need to keep our agribusiness competitive with worldwide competition. And so I think that's the government's role should be to facilitate, not to restrict, but also there are watchdog kind of roles that the government can play.
Jack, we assume that as part of your campaign, right, you're going door to door to some extent, right?
Absolutely.
What are people saying when you knock on their door and they go in your homes? And we know that the way you do this, guys, you guys target Democrats you want to get turned out or independents you think you can turn. When you're walking independents and you knock on their door and they're home, I don't mean when you leave a card, when they open the door and invite you in, what's on their minds?
Well, I'll tell you what, I have talked to a lot of independents as well as a lot of Republicans in this race. And the amazing thing to me is that I'm hearing a constant message. The first part is they're very frustrated with business as usual, quote unquote, in Washington, and they're frustrated with partisanship. I actually have argued that I think a healthy Republican Party is better for Democrats. If we're going to have a two-party system, we function better that way. And so people are concerned about jobs in this district. They're concerned about the schools. And they're really frustrated with a do-nothing Congress and the sort of business as usual that ends up being no business getting done in Washington.
Speaking of no business getting anything done, let's say you win. The Democrats are not going to take over control of the House in this cycle. Jack, that's not going to happen. So if you win, you're in the minority. If Dave wins, he's in the majority. Wouldn't somebody in the majority be able to get more done?
I actually would disagree. In a two-party system, we need people like me in the minority side. The same way when the Republicans are in the minority, they need people who gravitate toward the middle and common sense, who are willing to work with ideas and across party lines to get that work done, because obstructionism takes place when the extremes take control. And so I would argue that I'm actually a better fit than Dave as a majority person, Republican winning, because the Democrats are going to need people who reach across the aisle.
We talked about this a little bit the last time you were on. It's really getting frustrating for me. There's going to be no troops from Arab coalition countries. Turkey, as you know, is obsessed with deposing Assad. They have a Kurdish problem of their own. Kobani about to fall. Turkey's doing nothing. They got 5,000 tanks sitting on the border, sitting idly by as Kobani is about to fall. If Obama goes to Congress and asks for troops and war to get us involved, sucked into this sectarian religious battle, and I'm doing some narrative that's been going on since 300 A.D., I mean, when does it make sense for us to just get the hell out of there?
Well, that's what I've been saying all along. I think I said once with you,
yes.
We go in once, okay. We go in twice, we need to start asking some questions.
Right.
We go in a third time, and that's really a reflection on our inability to decide what our purpose is and what we're really hoping to accomplish. And so I I have great trepidation about the way this is evolving, and am extremely frustrated about the difficulty of getting friends and coalition together, because we can't remain the world's policeman and deal with all the other things we need to deal with.
Jack, there's going to be no Arab troops, okay? And the congressman that get on my show and say, well, we need the Arab coalition nations to supply ground troops. They're not going to supply any troops. Who's going to supply them? Jordan? Kuwait? They're not going to happen. The biggest opportunity there, the biggest army, the biggest NATO military presence ally is Turkey, and they're going to do nothing. So we're left out there once again sifting in the wind, dropping bombs. It's inevitable before our pilots start going down. Now we want to send troops in. We got to get authorization from that. The question is, if we just got out, at least then they have to figure it out themselves, right?
Yes, and I think this also comes back to something we talked about before, that I believe this conversation needs to take place in Congress,
yes,
and that the president should not be acting unilaterally.
Absolutely not. And I would assume that you're in support of Senator from Virginia Tim Kaine's War Powers Act, which would make any president, Obama, Chris Christie, anybody, come to Congress before he can indiscriminately drop bombs on people and start wars, right?
I am in support of that, absolutely.
That's going to be the final word. We want to thank Jack Trammell for being with us. Again, just so our audience knows, we have asked Dave Pratt on our show in the last several weeks many times. His communication director, Brian Gottstein, said no. His problem, not mine.